This is 5 Live Sport.
Tuffers and Vaugham's Cricket Show.
Yes, after all the weather delays, we did finally get some play between England and Pakistan today. The match finished as a draw, but goodness me, what a frustrating 5 days, Philip.
Very frustrating. With light issues, there was mizzle, drizzle, downpours. We were in and out. All we had to do was shake it all about, and we would have had the full house, I can tell you. But England are still one up.
That's a very good point. Well made. No Vaughan this week. Marcus Trescothick is with us. You've been as frustrated as everybody else?
Yeah, it's been rubbish, isn't it? I've been watching an eye of it on the TV. Very disappointing, obviously, not to get much cricket in this week.
Coming up, we will review the second test. We'll hear from the chairman of Hampshire, and we'll also look back on the extraordinary career of MS Dhoni.
Tuffers and Vaugham's Cricket Show.
On 5 Live.
I know. I've
just got back. It was hell, Jack.
Have you? You actually look like you've had 5 days in the field, Phil. You look whacked.
Well, it almost was like that. I mean, it was just incredible. Let's just say, I mean, this was some real freak weather conditions. I don't think I've ever seen a game where, like, just a duvet of greyness just sat over a game and the ground for just 5 days and didn't move until the last 2 hours on day 5. So we won't get, we won't say that this is the norm. But I mean, crikey, O'Reilly. I mean, the light, was it the light? Was it too wet? Wasn't it too wet? And most of the evenings the sun came out and we were playing cricket on the concourse and we could see perfectly well.
Yeah, I mean, as I heard them say on TMS at one point today, more cricket was played on the concourse, it felt like, during this test than actually out on the field. And also, you know, as I've pointed out a few times, having listened to a lot of the discussion on TMS during the first test, 4 of the 5 days at the Ageas Bowl, it was beautiful and sunny here in Manchester. And I sometimes feel that balance needs to be...
I don't believe that for 1 minute.
Come on, Marcus, you know, it's always cracking the flags in the north. Come on.
Marcus, can I just ask you... Marcus, can I just ask you something? Are you doing this from your bed? Are you in bed?
Yeah, I'm sat on my bed in my hotel room in Birmingham, mate.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We're playing obviously Somerset are at Edgbaston. We're going into day 4 tomorrow. So it's very interesting.
I tell you what, actually, just on that, as we've got you, because we've got plenty of time to talk bad light and rain. How have you found the Bob Willis Trophy? Because actually, you know, I look at scorecards and everything, and it's a good opportunity for some younger players, this, isn't it?
Yeah, well, there's a difference in it this year. Obviously, you know, I don't think anyone's really got overseas players, have they? Has anybody drafted them in? I did see Jeetan Patel was at Edgbaston today, but he's obviously not playing in the game. But it has been good. Yeah, I think you've seen some younger generation players. I know for Somerset for sure, we've probably got 1 or 2 that have had opportunities to forge a place and to sort of push their case into, you know, playing first class cricket. And it's been the same across the counties, isn't it? You're seeing some younger lads that potentially you wouldn't have seen or have been given opportunities to, you know, to flourish and play in first class games. So it has done that, that's for sure. What it has done. Do you think?
Sorry, Marcus. Do you think it's out of necessity, or do you think it's actually counties have looked at it and gone, okay, it's a bit different this year. Let's see what we can develop and take advantage of it.
I would say a lot of directors of cricket or head coaches would be looking at it and going, right, this is an opportunity that we can look at X and Y to see, you know, how far progressed they are, or are they ready to have that opportunity, you know, full time? I think that's what they're seeing more than anything else, which has been a good thing, isn't it? Because it's an opportunity they may not have had we been playing in normal times.
I mean, I must just add also about the Test match that the little bit of cricket that we did get in was fantastic. You know, that's what I think was so upsetting about it. You've got a couple of great sides here, a couple of great bowling attacks. And Tres, that pitch was doing all sorts down at the Ageas Bowl.
I'm not sure it would have been a great Test match for the batsman.
No.
It was lethal, wasn't it? Mohammed Abbas looked horrible to face. He looked like a proper normal county bowler on a lethal pitch, and it was going all over the place.
Yeah, Varney was saying that is the kind of bowling that he would have just had sleepless nights about, just nipping it around, on and around that off stump. Absolute horrific. But, we saw a great knock by Rizwan. I think England would have been a little bit disappointed that, to be fair, Pakistan got to 230 or 40 odd, but take nothing away from Pakistan because, I was thinking, well, they've just lost out at Old Trafford. They're going to be coming here a little bit deflated, going to bowl first on that track. This could be 100, 150 all out. But I'll tell you something, they got stuck right in and played very well.
In case people that haven't heard what happened today, I mean, it's all, in many ways, doesn't make any difference. But just to, dot the I's and cross the T's, England finished on 110 for 4. In total, around 3.5 days of play were lost during this test match to rain and bad light. And the ICC have said that they will review bad light regulations at their next meeting off the back of this test. Get the thoughts of Marcus and Phil in just a moment. This is what Joe Root had to say afterwards.
There's so many different ways you could look at it. I think with the balls, if the Test Championship used the same ball everywhere, that would make that easier in terms of changing it around, I think.
Okay, yeah.
I think the Duke ball, for example, is a lot darker than the Cuckaboo ball, naturally. Maybe like a very light red ball. And I think the standard of floodlights have got to be right there, of a minimum standard, if you like.
Yeah.
But I think as much as we can, we've got to protect the game as it is. I don't want to change it too much. You don't want to drastically change the conditions because of potentially only an hour's bad light in a 5-day game. This has been very extreme this week, where you're not going to see many games like this. Where the other thing as well, maybe starting earlier, starting at 10:30 if we lose some play.
Everyone here too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a possibility to look at in the future. It's something that happens elsewhere in the world, and it doesn't happen here.
Is there a danger, do you think, Phil? I'll come to you first of all, in overreacting a little bit in all of this,
Perhaps.
in that you had freakish weather conditions in what is obviously a freakish era for sport in this country?
Yeah, just quickly as well, sorry, that the 110 for 4 is the lowest amount of runs that England have ever declared for. Just throw that in. We had such long days, we were looking at all sorts of
Spent a lot of time with Andy Zaltzman, have you, this week? Yeah.
Now, yes, and I agree with Joe there a little bit, but let's be honest here. Cricket has moved on so much, even in my lifetime. We've had, white balls, pink balls, red balls, DRS, different sort of formats, the hundreds coming along as well. But the bad light issue seems to just go nowhere. You know what I mean? And I think it now needs to be addressed, and especially in this era, and especially with all the COVID things in place, people just want to see some people playing cricket. We don't want to, be dangerous or anything like that, or cause any problems for players or put their sort of health and safety at risk. But I mean, it was just what got us all down at the Ageas Bowl was that it was sort of like 12 o'clock or something, and the light was obviously going to be bad all day, and there were just like little subtle dips and then little troughs, when it got a bit lighter, a little bit, darker and what have you. It wasn't like the light was coming to the end of the day when it's fading, the dark's going to, the darkness is on its way in the twilight and off you go. It was just middle of the day, and we all just thought that they could have stayed out there and played and given, after all the effort to get it on and Pakistan coming over, it just seems that everyone was just wandering off the field all the time, and it got very, very frustrating. So I think there are conversations that need to be had about this, and just bring up those rules, to the modern day.
Yeah, I think there's two parts to this which are really quite important, and Joe Root makes a really important point when he talks about the quality of the lights, and that with this day and age, we're now seeing LED lights. So LED lights at Taunton are as the best I've seen on a cricket ground in England. And obviously I'm biased because it's my home ground and obviously played there for a long period of time. But that is the quality that we need to get of the lights across the ground, across the grounds, across the country. If we get that, then I think we can definitely expect that there's going to be a big improvement in the quality of light when it gets dark. I'm just thinking back a few years ago, and I was on a tour when we went to New Zealand, and I think the regs were changed after that. The regulations changed because we had bad light over the course of a day, and then we ended up playing a test match through till about 7:30 in the evening, and it was pitch black. So I remember there was a shot, I can't remember who it was, someone whacked one into the deep, and Usman anyway, was on the boundary looking up in the sky and couldn't see the ball because you got a red ball against a black sky, and that had got to a ridiculous point where that was a proper day-night game. And I think after that sort of point, the regulations changed to when the shadows sort of took over, you had to come off.
Yeah, I mean, I think I made a very, very good point when I was on commentary that there are different kinds of dark. There is a light dark and a dark, if you know what I'm trying to say. As you said, towards the end of the day, like you're just saying there, Marcus, you know what I mean? That's fair enough. Crikey, O'Reilly, we can't see anything. Let's come off. But it's that sort of like, that sort of grey mizzliness that is around sometimes in England, in that morning. And you've just got to try and go. And I think also there needs to be a slight attitude change towards it as well. I mean, I can remember when I was playing in county cricket, and then we were going up and down the country, one-day games, test matches, all of this. We sniffed a little bit of bad light, and all the batters were out there blinking, going, oh, come on, Humps, let's go and have a cup of tea and have a little bit of a rest. You know what I mean? But nowadays, you know what I mean, the guys, they're all there. They've been training in the bubble and what have you. And, let's get out there.
But hang on,
when you
God, there are so many different ways we could go with this conversation. Just on the change of attitude from players or from umpires, so that they don't get that light meter out whenever they do get it out, and then take that reading.
It's a regulation change, isn't it?
It is. I'm not blaming the umps here. The umps, bless them, you know what I mean. They were having a terrible time of it. You know what I mean. All they were doing was putting in what the laws are. So perhaps the new law of what is bad light perhaps needs to be lowered a little bit, or something like that. As Marcus said, better lights and everything. But crikey, O'Reilly, let's get the game on. We've got a duty to the playing public.
Yeah. So let's deal with the bulbs, right? I never ever thought that on a Tuffers and Vaugham we'd be digging into sort of. Those
I think a nice 35 watt might be nice. You know what I mean? A nice spotlight like we've got in my kitchen.
But I suppose there are serious points to this, because I heard Mark Ramprakash talking on commentary about the best lights he's played under. I think may have been in Melbourne or somewhere like that. But the floodlights there were twice the height of what they are at the Oval, for example. I'm assuming your floodlights at Taunton are regulation height, but it's the bulbs that have created the greater brightness.
Absolutely.
Stop laughing at me.
Well, the Taunton lights are obviously very new for a start, and they're 50 metres high, so they're pretty high in comparison to some other floodlights around the country. But it's the bulb is the key part. It's what they have in all at Twickenham and all the Premier League football clubs now. I think the Wacker have got them. You can do all these different light shows, so you can do all this amazing stuff with it. But they are brighter. You can change the brightness of them for day cricket. You don't need them on 100% when you're playing with bad light during the day. But if you do bang them up and it's dark, it is bright. It is seriously bright. It reminds me very much of the lights when you go and play in Australia in this part of the world, because they definitely seem brighter than what we have over here.
And
like
the
important,
yes, and the important part of that brightness is that is a consistent brightness across the whole field, because what you don't want is just the wicket being bright, because you mentioned Usman Afzal there. If you're out in the deep and can't see anything, it's dangerous.
Absolutely, but the difference was that was a night sky at that point. Yeah. We're absolutely saying here, obviously, when it's gloomy and it's a grey, cloudy sky, we've got to be finding a solution, haven't we? We've got to get more cricket on, so it's appealing to the public and not sat in the change room running reruns on TV all the time.
No, and also another good point I think that was discussed was just to start a bit earlier. A lot of the time, the best part of the day was wasted. You know what I mean? Because it didn't fit into the right time to start or the right time to finish. So,
okay, but if you talk consistency and maybe the differing conditions that you might get in England, even if you start at 10 compared to starting at 11,
that's what I'm saying though.
But do you start every day at 10, or do you start at 11 and then if you're struggling a bit likewise, do you start at 10 the following day?
This is the sort of a change of mindset that I'm trying to say. You know what I mean? Test cricket is all about, we've got to be fair. We've got to be fair. Crikey, sometimes you go out the ball and there's cloud cover and it's swinging around. You come back the next day and it's bright sunshine and it's as flat as a pancake. You know what I mean? I think that it's got to be a slight change of mindset that, okay, you know, in English conditions, you're going to get the rough end of the stick sometimes. You might have to start earlier in conditions that don't suit or something like that. But then hopefully it's going to be swings and roundabouts. So I think it's more the change of mindset of let's just get out there and play. And I know all these guys have got careers to think about and, you know, wins and losses, and captains want, you know, don't want to get beaten in series and everything. But I think that's got to be put to one side a little bit and just get the game on.
Do you think there is a mindset in cricket, Marcus, then, that sometimes you don't accept, there is a reluctance to accept the luck of the draw sometimes? Yeah, I look at golf when I cover golf, and I find,
Yes.
I find the golfers really so relaxed about accepting, look, if they get the worst of conditions because they're in the wrong half of the draw and going out morning one day and afternoon the next, as opposed to the other way around, that's just the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah, I think maybe we've been brought up in the way that, you know, we just want it fair and right and playable and match fit for every day, don't we? I don't think it's ever really been discussed to go, right, okay, you're going to have to suck it up now and again. But we do in occasions, you know, when you go to Headingley and you win the toss and, you know, the sun's coming out at 12 o'clock, you're going to go into bat and it's going to be gloomy to start with. But, you know, little things like that, you just get attuned to it. We're very much attuned at the moment is to say, right, well, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. Let's not play until it's fair and it's right, that we can all think that it's good for everybody.
Yeah, and I'm not having a go at the umpires. I'm not having a go at the players here or the ground staffs or anything. I just think that there, you know, needs to be some changes with lights and what have you, but then also just sort of a bit of legislation just to say, you know, at any possible time, crikey, we don't want people slipping over and doing cruciates and things like that.
No,
you know, I mean, there's got to be that health and safety there, and we understand that. But it just something needs to be done. There needs to be a conversation had, and quickly, for my mind.
We're going to talk to Rob Bransgrove in just a moment. He's listening to this conversation, but just a couple of things on the specifics of batting in bad light, Marcus.
Yes.
And first of all, Joe Root's point there about a Duke's ball being a darker red than a Kookaburra. How much actual difference do you think that would make in bad light?
I don't know. I'm not sure on the answer on that. You know, there is a difference between the Kookaburra ball. It's a juicier red compared to a darker maroon almost of a Duke. And it, you know, more often than not, when you go pick a ball, you know, everybody picks a dark one as much as possible. They think that whether it seems a bit more or swings a bit more. They're not really sure, but it seems to be the trend of that's what people go for. You know, I think there is something in it. That whether it's enough that we can consider that bad light on that, I don't know. I think you'd need to test it and get players to try it out and see what the difference is.
The pink ball?
Oh, yeah.
Well, there's another contention altogether, isn't it? I don't know with the pink ball. I've never played with a pink ball, so I don't really know. But you know, you're getting into different games of cricket almost. You're day-night cricket completely, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, perhaps the manufacturers need to, you know, find the best colour or whatever. You could swap balls. I mean, that would become a little bit chaotic and what have you. You know, if you want to have, you know, regular kind of cricket, it's got to be all round the world and sort of universal. So, listen, it might just start a conversation. I think that's what we're trying to say here. That was a one-off. The weather was freakish down there. But, you know, it was very, very frustrating.
And also, I mean, both Stuart Broad and Zach Crawley said during the game that the bad light was dangerous. Yeah. Do you think sometimes, Marcus, spectators and maybe some in the media, even those who have played before, get a bit complacent about bad light because they're not the ones standing at the end of the wicket about to face someone who's going to wang it down at 90 miles an hour? Yeah,
I guess we do, because I think once you've finished playing the game, you want to see the cricket as much as anybody else, don't you? It's like, you know, we appreciate that, you know, it's a spectator sport and people pay a lot of money to watch it. And I think we do. We want to get it on. We want to show the game to the world. And it just seems when you're sat on the other side of the fence, it seems a lot more stupid to think, why are we not playing in this? But as a player, you do sometimes go, right, it's actually trickier than you think when someone's bowling really quick, or it's the conditions are quite hard work.
Well, there you go. I mean, I was reading in the papers, crikey O'Reilly, it could have been in Barbados with not a cloud in the sky when I walked out of bat to face Curtly Ambrose, and that was dangerous. So I think this is another thing that needs to be sort of addressed as well. You know, what is dangerous? You know, would you say that England attack was dangerous? You know what I mean? And everyone's got helmets on, everyone's got chest pads on, gloves. I mean, what is the danger? We don't want anyone to get one in the railings, you know, and be carted off, because we are playing a dangerous game, let's be fair. But, you know, with protection and things like that, you know, or when I was playing, you know, and bad light came along, we always used to stick the spinners on. You know what I mean? And that was sort of, perhaps you have to then play spin bowling or put a medium pacer on or something just to keep everyone out there. That's what.
But we're not going to go back to that, Tuffers. Are we not going to go back to that point where you think, oh, bad light comes around, the skipper has to put the spinner on if we want to keep the game out there, surely? Well,
no, but I'm just saying it's just conversation that you're throwing in there. What is the best way of trying to do it? That's what I'm just trying to say. You know, if it's not technology, it's just sort of like I don't know.
I take your point, Tuffers, that it is a dangerous sport, and you batting it, as you say, against Curtly Ambrose in bright sunshine.
Yeah, or short leg.
Short leg is dangerous. But I suppose the danger comes from, well, if you can't see the ball properly, Marcus. I mean at least theoretically, Phil, you ought to have been able to see the ball properly when facing Curtly Ambrose.
Yeah. Well, do you think? Well, let me just. Of course, yes, I'm correct, and he never got me. But then, Marcus, you know, do you think that then there should be a relook at the levels that we're coming off at? I mean, you must have played in some sort of, or is it spot on those levels? Is that the right kind of?
That's the contentious issue here, isn't it? Because they're obviously taking a reading, and they've got a judgment in mind to go, right, when we hit that point, it's going to be too dark. But I think we can see, well, now we're sat on the other side and we have our own opinions about it, that you could potentially carry on for a little bit longer, hoping that it won't drop. Instead of having it at one level, we're going to come to a new level where we think it's too dark at that point. You know, and that's going to be the key bit, isn't it? Trying to work out what that level, that safe level is for everybody. Because you're right in saying we don't want anyone to get hurt. Of course we don't. That's the last thing we want to see on the box, seeing someone get pinned and it really affecting a game, because you know we've altered it in that way. But where we stand currently, it's been okay. When we've been through those sort of light periods, it's still been okay, and batters have still seen the ball, slips have still been able to catch it, and it's still been okay, hasn't it?
Yeah, and that's the thing that kind of then frustrates everyone again. Is like Rizwan was batting, you know what I mean? And they were looking at the light meters. He comes down the wicket to Stuart Broad, bowled at 86 miles an hour, and smashes him straight back over his head. And everyone turns around, well, the lights are on. He's obviously seeing it all right. Why are we then coming off? So all these kind of things, I think that a lot of the things that frustrate the general public.
And presumably frustrated Rod Bransgrove, the Hampshire chairman, who obviously was watching. Evening, Rod.
Hi guys, how are you doing?
Yeah, we're very good, thank you. Rod. I mean, as you will have heard from quite a lot of this discussion, it's not the most simple subject to solve, really.
It's not. It's a very complex issue, and I've heard some of the suggestions there. In fact, I thought I heard somebody that sounded a little bit like Phil Tufnell saying he wanted to start earlier. Incongruous with the cat that I know, but you know, I get the point. It's incredibly frustrating, and it seems to be unique to this country, really, that we have such issues with light. Everybody understands the issues with rain, but somehow when we get to this issue of light, and you know, we see these beautiful mornings and then beautiful evenings that we've had this week at the Ageas Bowl, and no cricket going on, it is immensely frustrating, I must say.
I mean, do you talk about the flexibility that could be available within the game? Where, you know, when you're having meetings with the powers that be, do you think the game could be more flexible? The power brokers of the game, if you like, in terms of the rules of cricket, don't really extend anymore to the county chairman. You know, this is something which the ICC and MCC and to some extent the ECB
are involved in. And I know that there's real concern, because obviously the phones have been hot for the last couple of nights, and there's genuine concern that this is not good for television. It has to be said, of course, that it gets much, much more attention when there's no cricket being played because, of course, there's nothing else to talk about. So it was a very, very topical subject last night when there was absolutely nothing else to talk about. And then there's fingers being pointed in all sorts of directions. But the truth is, it is an issue which I think that we need to start addressing along the lines that some of you guys were talking about. And we need to investigate ways that we can give viewers and indeed broadcasters a better bang for their buck.
Yeah, I mean, Rod Tuffers here, you must have had a think about this of yourself. Have you come up with any ideas? I mean, changing the light bulbs or anything like that?
Well, we're constantly looking at enhancing light, but the feedback we get is that the difference in the light itself, doesn't really help too much with the red ball. It doesn't seem to elevate the visibility of the red ball to any great degree. But this is what we're hearing from batters, and all we can do is to accept what we're hearing. If there are methods of getting us out there a little bit earlier in the morning to make up for lost time, I would welcome that. If there are methods of keeping us out there a bit longer when you get beautiful evenings like yesterday evening, I would support that. I do think we have to be just a little bit more flexible in our approach to working hours, if you like, to try and get the best that we can out of all daylight, really.
Do you have sympathies? Say, you talked about fingers being pointed. Day 4 yesterday called off at 10-4, and then numerous photos appearing of the bright sunshine afterwards. Do you have sympathies with your ground staff, for example, who some people say, well, why wasn't it ready for this or why wasn't it ready for that? I mean, they can only do as they are instructed, presumably.
Yes, I can't really. It wouldn't be right for me to comment on the management of the game because that's beyond my pay grade, and that is an ICC fixture, and the ICC are responsible through the match officials for making all the decisions. I was a bit frustrated that fingers were pointed at our ground staff, but it's been made very clear today that the ground staff, the head groundsman and all of his staff, who are adequate in numbers, very competent in ability, and they did absolutely every single thing that was asked of them, and they acted according to all the instructions they had. So as far as the Aegeus Bowl is concerned, we did all that we possibly could to get as much cricket as we could out of this game. That there is an issue about the borders between bad weather and bad light. And there is an issue about the extent to which bad light interferes with our national game, our national summer game.
You did look into having a roof on a cricket ground, didn't you?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Yes, we did. I think it was in 2003, but it might have been 2004 when we were looking at ways of giving it was called the Rose Bowl in those days. And we were looking at ways of trying to make it competitive with the other established test match grounds, which you may remember in some cases in those days were in pretty shoddy condition.
Yeah.
So we looked at a number of ways to say, well, how can we develop this to become the most attractive option in the country? And one of them that we investigated for a short period of time was the potential for putting a retractable roof over the playing area. But it was so horrendously expensive. It would have cost something like £100 million in 2004 or thereabouts.
Ooh, okay.
Wow.
And the technologies that we had, actually, the process of retracting the roof would have been very similar to the process that you use for vernacular railways overseas. So you have systems of pulleys. I think we were going to have 24 metal stanchions, which all cantilever to the center of the ground where there's a big metal saucer that carried all the junctions and all the wiring for lights and all that sort of thing. It was a massive project. And I doubt that it would have got planning permission because of the height of it. Yeah. But the truth is, there isn't any method of getting any kind of repayment for that sort of investment, because the ECB would obviously be attracted to having a ground with a roof on it, but they couldn't put all of the games in one ground because part of their journey is to try and get Test match cricket and international cricket around the country. So in a way, there was no financial model that would support that level of investment, and that's when we came up with the plan to build the hotel.
Which has been fantastic, by the way, mate. I mean, we've been royally looked after down there in the bubble. Thanks very much for that. It's been great. One other thing, we're talking about rain and getting things ready and what have you. You see, like in Sri Lanka,
Yes,
the whole ground being covered.
yes.
Is that a possibility, or how comes that doesn't happen? Because there was an issue with sort of, bits just off the square today and sawdust and having to fork it all. In Sri Lanka, it's any sign of rain, in a quick as a flash, the whole ground seems to be covered.
Yes, look, I mean, we invested really heavily in state-of-the-art drainage system for this ground, and we're confident that it drains very quickly and that it's fit for purpose. And the period of time that we normally think that it's going to be dry is 60 to 90 minutes. It depends on the amount of rainfall and over what period and what have you. Thereafter, there is a period whereby, the umpires have to consider how long will it take after that to make sure that the players are ready to start, that the outfield is as dry as we want it, and there's no leftover pools or there's no danger to the bowlers' run-ups. Yeah. So I think on reflection from this game, if there was one takeaway for me, I would look at the extent of the covers that we provide for bowlers' run-ups, because the bowlers' run-ups in some cases were longer than the cover that we provided. But other than that, we believe absolutely completely that the covering was totally adequate, and that I think if you were staying in the hotel, you'd have seen last night that at 6 o'clock, the whole ground was ready for use again. Yeah, but nobody was there.
And to be fair, and we are sort of like backing up the ground staff and whatever. There was a monumental downpour at about 4 o'clock in the morning.
Which Ian Ward was up filming, which as Stuart Broad replied to him, "What on earth are you doing up at 4 a.m. filming that?"
And he's just coming in, I reckon.
Yeah. And the other thing in all of this, Rod, as well, is, as we tried to say at the start, It feels like a bit of a freak set. You've had a freak load of weather in a freak era for sport in this country, and therefore an awful lot of attention on it. And it's not often. I mean, even the first test had plenty of weather problems, but they still had a result, and it was a fantastic test. It's very rare to get a test that is decimated like this one has been.
It most certainly is, and it's so unfortunate because, of course, so many people have done so much to get these fixtures on. From the countries coming over here, the Pakistanis that have travelled here, and the ECB and the individual grounds and everything that's gone into these games has been on occasion superhuman. And, for a groundsman who's having his test match debut this season to prepare 3 test matches in one summer is a massive challenge, but everyone's risen to it and they've all performed superbly. It's just that we've been damned by freak weather for this area. We've never seen anything like it in our part of Hampshire. It's extraordinary.
But I think, Marcus, because of, as Rod says, because of what everybody's gone through to make sure this can take place, the countries come in, the bio bubbles, etc., I think that has increased the frustrations.
Of course it has, yeah, and that's what happens, isn't it? Once we get these situations, which is a freakish event, the weather has been extremely bad, and we've seen thunderstorms across the country all week. This is when we start sitting down and posing questions and trying to pick it up. But I would back up with Rod, really. Obviously, Simon Lee, I must say, the ex-Somerset groundsman, poached by Hampshire in the winter, has done a very good job along with his team to try and to get the game on and do everything they can.
Yeah, it's not getting away from the issue of light, though. Listen, as we say, if it pours down with rain, if it pours down with rain, it pours down with rain. There's nothing.
Just on the line, just going back to the bulbs, Rod. And sorry, I'm going back to the bulbs because Marcus was talking about the bulbs at Taunton, the LED ones. That's what they are, aren't they? Yes, Marcus.
Yeah.
So they've got which have been sensational. Now, does the size of the Aegeus Bowl affect the bulbs and their power?
Well, the bulbs and the power is calculated according to the size of the ground. That's how the size of those mounts was originally calculated, and we had the manufacturers in just before the whole season to adjust them all to make sure that they were all live, and that any dead ones were being replaced and all this kind of thing. We are minded at some stage maybe to enhance them further, which would be just creating more wattage, if you like, from the same stanchions. But they are more than fit for purpose, and I haven't heard any complaints directly linked to the floodlights at the Aegeus Bowl. But the issue is probably not so much the lights around the circuit, but it is the response to light and at what stage we respond to it. Yeah. That seems to be the crunch point, and that's been amplified by this particular fixture. But we have heard it from time to time for quite a long time now, and it just felt as though this particular game brought the whole thing to a bit of a head.
Rod, it's been like that for a while, hasn't it? I would say we've been having these conversations for a period of time about trying to get more cricket on and more. Why are we going off a bad light and all these sort of things now? When do you think it's going to change? Is it the ICC will need to? Obviously, I know they're now going to consider it after this game, aren't they?
Well, I hope so. I mean, I haven't heard any statements yet from the ICC, and ultimately the responsibility for all of this vests with ICC. And one hopes that they've taken all this on board. I mean, I think most of the world thinks it's a fairly parochial issue, that it seems to affect us in this country more than others. Although I can remember Test matches finishing in the dark in India and elsewhere. Yes. Without anything like the same kind of publicity. But the truth is that it is becoming an irritant, and I'm concerned that had we not been staging these games behind closed doors, we might have had a very irritated crowd over the last day or two, and that would have been an even bigger management issue. So, I think the overall subject of light and the point at which it goes from being inconvenient to dangerous, I think that's probably the key issue. How can we find a method which genuinely represents the difference between sort of inconvenience and danger? And of course, then that varies according to who you've got at the other end, because it can be bloody dangerous facing Jofra Archer in fading light, but maybe a sort of wobbling medium pacer, it doesn't carry the same amount of threat, certainly not of injury.
No, not of injury. Rod, thank you very much for giving us your thoughts this evening. Much appreciated.
Okay, no
Talk soon.
Thanks,
thank
mate.
you, Rod Bransgrove,
All the
Hampshire
best.
Chairman.
Bye.
It's interesting, Marcus, when you say, that we've had these issues for a while. I mean, we've all. Oh, well, we all probably grew up. Certainly, me and you, Marcus, Tuffers is a little bit older, but grew up. I can remember sitting in grounds and booing Dickie Bird when he took players. I mean, sitting in crowds did that. My first job in sport, being a cricket reporter in the Northeast. That's where I must have spent half my time in 1997 talking about the ridiculous nature of umpires taking players off in the light when it seemed fun. This is decades old.
Yeah, it is, but it's got worse, isn't it? Because of the introduction of very good quality lights across the country now. It just seems stupid to think we play day-night cricket, but when suddenly the lights come on and it's red ball, that we go off so quickly. But I can't see it changing a massive amount. It's not suddenly going to go now back to how it was, where you can just play and play and play until the overs are done. I don't think it will go to that point, but I do think we'll see a reduction in potentially what the actual light scale or the readings will be.
Because once that precedent is set, you can't shift from it, can you?
No.
That's set on the first day. That is so who then decides that? Is that the umpires, or is there actually sort of like a letter of the law from the ICC?
I don't know. I don't know if there's a set number that when it drops below that, that's what it is, or whether it's just the umpire's judgment and go, right, I think it's bad now. What's the meter reading? It is 1.1 or whatever it will be. Right, it's time to go off.
I think it's that the first time, because then that reading, they then have to abide by that reading for the rest of that test match for the consistency.
So it's the umpires who then set the precedent.
Well, that's what. Yeah.
Well, so then perhaps the umpires need to. I mean, the umpires were fantastic down there. They were trying everything they could. You know what I mean? But they obviously thought the light was bad. But then when the rain was threatening to come and everything, they then sort of, they then thought to themselves, right, listen, there's this massive black cloud coming up over the back. Let's get off here, because we've sort of like thought to ourselves that this is going to be absolutely tipping down in about 2 or 3 minutes. Got off, and then, then that absolute biblical downpour hit. And they'd managed to get the covering on. So perhaps then they could sort of like think, well, hold on a minute. As you say, it's 12 o'clock. The light's dipping up and down. We might just sort of give it a little bit of time like that. That's just a thought as well.
Also, and when you do it, take lunch and tea at the earliest possible opportunity. I did see one tweet today that said resumption starts at 3:20. I'm guessing tea will be 3:40, which was tongue in cheek, because obviously there wasn't, there was.
Yeah, that's ridiculous as well. If you just play a 20-minute session or something.
The other big frustration in all of this, I think where lots of the frustration comes from, is because the first test had been so good, Marcus, and actually because Pakistan had rallied a bit as well in this test against the England attack, and because it had looked so juicy when England were reduced to 7-1, that it just felt like, everything is set up for another cracker. That's where a lot of the frustration comes from too.
Yeah, of course it is, and I think it's, we're in these different times, we want to see just good cricket on the TV. We were blessed with it with the West Indies series. The first test, as you say, was a beauty as well, and we got some good cricket, what we wanted to see, and we continue to want to see that from the last test match. Should the weather be okay? Although I know the weather is still not the best it's going to be for the next week or so, isn't it? So we could be sat here. Or you could be sat here next week's show talking about a very same problem because the weather is still not great.
The cricket has been good though, Tuffers.
Oh, it's been brilliant. You're spot on there. That sets up to be a great test match. It might not have gone 5 days, but I fancied Pakistan just to have their noses in front, as it showed today. With England about 100 and something for 4. That first innings total, they batted beautifully. I was thinking that Jimmy and these boys, listen, they bowled very well as well, but I was thinking for a 150 bowl out. But they really did show a lot of fight, a lot of spirit. Especially after just losing that first one. And, that Rizwan, I think they've got a great little competitor. All right, he shelled one behind the sticks today off the spinner, but it's set up beautifully for next week, actually, because I think the pitch will be very, very similar. It will do everything. And I think that the pitch is actually, and we're talking about groundsmen, I think the groundsmen need to be congratulated because that was a belting pitch at Old Trafford. Spun, it swung, it seamed. You could get your runs if you got stuck in and had a bit of luck along the way. And I think that this one will be of the same standard.
You see the announcement, play to resume at 3:20, Marcus, on day 5 of a Test match with England 7-1 in their first innings, and the natural reaction for most people is, what's the point? Why don't they just call it off? If you're Zach Crawley and you've made a half century today, and you're sitting in your hotel room now, how do you feel about that half century?
I'm sure he would feel a lot happier knowing that he's got another half century under his belt. Of course he would. Would he have felt the same going out there and nicking the first ball? But no, of course not, because that's the situation of the game. We appreciate the ups and the downs of it. I think, again, this is going back for a long period of time. We've had it in county cricket forever. When you know that you've got a dead game, when do you call the game off and stop playing because there's absolutely nothing on the game? You play so much cricket anyway. What's the point in playing an extra 30, 40 overs at this point? Let's just shake hands and go home, at that point. So, but people want to watch. People have come to see, pay the money, and they want to see the game, don't they? So,
I bet he felt better than Farwood Alam after an 11-year wait, getting a 4-ball naught. Yeah. I did feel for him as well. Most peculiar stance, which was really interesting as well.
The belter, wasn't it?
Yeah, I know. If there was a crowd there, I could just imagine you go, nipping off for lunch, and then sort of like you'd come back and he was batting. You'd think you'd come back to your wrong seat, you know what I mean? Because he was facing square leg. It was amazing, but I did feel
I'll tell you what, he was even more extreme than Chanderpaul, wasn't it? And you were with John Carr quite a bit, I bet, weren't you?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, he was completely
Peter Willie.
Toes completely facing down the track, shoulders square facing down the track. But I mean, an 11-year wait. Hopefully, he gets another run out.
Just on that, can you even begin to imagine how you get yourself into that situation where you play like that, Marcus?
No. Absolutely not. No, no, I just can't. At what point do you go through your practice and go, I'm going to stand straight on down the ground and think this is a really good idea? Another one that baffles me is like George Bailey. George Bailey went the opposite way and almost stood with his back to the bowler, and that was like, okay, at what point do you think this is a good idea where you're going to try this and then take it into a game and go, this is going to work, and it is successful, and it obviously does. These players have good averages in first-class cricket, so something must be working. Yeah. It's just very, very rogue, isn't it?
Yeah, but just funny old boys, chappers, these batters. If they go through a little run of bad stuff, they start doing all sorts of funny things.
But just to go back to Zach Crawley, who has had a good start to international cricket, but has obviously been left out because of how England needed to balance their side as well. You just wonder, when you need luck in international sport, everybody needs a bit of luck to succeed in whatever it may be. Just how important coming back into the side and that session, and it might just change, cement his place.
Exactly. I mean, because he was after a ton there, He was after 100, I reckon. You know what I mean? Because he could have carried on, and I'm sure that Joe would have carried on if he was still batting. The way he was batting, the positivity, the way he looked to take on Yasir Shah, and also the seam bowlers in awkward conditions. He looks like a right little find for me. So good attacking, tall, gets up his toes and just looks confident. Yeah, he looks good.
Does this feel, if Ben Stokes is fit and obviously everything is all right and Ben Stokes is back, does this feel as settled a top six, Marcus, as England have had for a while? Burns, Sibley, Crawley, Root, Stokes, Pope. Does that at the moment pick itself?
I think it's as close as you're going to get to a settled team. I think there's still people need to go out there and continue to cement places and score heavier volumes of runs to keep putting themselves in contention. I think probably more than anything else, you have 4, 5, 6 on nailed in, aren't they? I think, Root, Stokes, Pope, we're seeing obviously 2 of those are world-class players, and Pope is looking a very high-quality player. Then the top 3, I would say the opening partnership is looking is growing all the time. They're very steely players, both determined and not, they'd go about their business in a similar sort of fashion, and have done well and warrant a good run in the team. And obviously now you're seeing the likes of someone like a Zach Crawley, who's showing signs where you think, okay, this guy's got good character and he goes about his business well. He can cope with the situation, he can deal with the failures, he can come in pressure environments and succeed. So that he needs a bit more time to really get that position, isn't it? And it's looking quite nice when you see that as a top 3. But it's still got to develop. It's still got to grow. They've still got to keep producing the runs to stay in the side, obviously.
I tell you, chappers, if that wicket's anything like this one on Friday, I think Jofra Archer's got to come into it. I think a little bit of pace on that. And if he bowls anything like, because when it did just harden up a little bit, it did actually start to carry and kick a bit. So not only was it sort of nipping at you, people were getting hit on the hip and sort of like, getting completely squared up and flying through to the keeper. So that's going to be England's
surely you've got to go
decision.
the other way, Tuffers, haven't you?
What's that?
Well, Darren Stevens, someone like that. Get Stevo in on that pitch. He would have been horrible. Horrible to face.
I saw he got his 800th wicket or something, didn't he, on Twitter?
He is made for those pitches. He would terrorise the Pakistani batting time.
Well, that's interesting.
In a normal summer, Marcus, but he hasn't been in the bio bubble. So, unfortunately, that's the one thing that rules it out.
That's where they've messed up, isn't it?
Yeah. See, that is interesting for me, though, you see, because I know they went for Sam because, a little bit a bit more in the batting and they're 1-0 up and everything. And you do think that someone just putting it on that length like a Mohammed Abbas, but then is he trickier, like Vaugham was saying, he gives him sleepless nights, he would have done, you know what I mean? But then surely Jofra Archer bowling at 90 miles an hour, surely that is trickier, isn't it, Marcus?
Oh, I'm not so sure. I would, in my time, I would always rather have gone to face somebody who's got a bit more pace on the ball because you have less time to react, so you don't end up just sort of following it around and it's going and it's nipping about. I was exactly the same as Vaugham. I faced Darren Stevens and he's terrorised me for years, mate. Every time. Him, Dimmy Mascarenhas, Tim Murtaugh, all these people who just knock it on top of off stump. It's horrible. It's filthy, but it's horrible to face. I hate it. But they do such a great job.
Yeah, and it is great to see, actually, because I can remember playing in the era when, if you didn't bowl at 90 miles an hour, you didn't really even get looked at much, you know what I mean? Yeah. We had that sort of Angus Fraser thing and then Duncan Fletcher. Yeah. It had all looking at speeds. It was all about speeds. If you're going to go to Australia, I know it's different conditions and what have you, but, to be a test class player, you've got to be in the high 80s and 90s. And it was refreshing to see Mohammed Abbas just coming in and just the skill and the accuracy of it. And I'm sure he knows what he's doing. With that wobble seam, I'm sure he's actually not just trying to hit that wobble seam. I'm sure he's darting one back and he can do it at will. Because it was absolutely beautiful to see. It really. But
that insight, Marcus, is fascinating to say, if you've got that pace on the ball and you haven't got time to think about it, then that in some ways, to us, mere mortals who wouldn't be able to see one at 75 miles an hour, let alone one at 90 miles an hour. But that if you coming down at 75 or 77, you have that split second to think.
Yeah, you do. It's the problem is when these guys do they're lower pace clearly, but all modes of dismissal are in play every ball. So you could nick off, you could get bowled, or you could get LBW. Every ball that they bowl, they're always in that sort of zone because it doesn't necessarily bounce over the top. Because they're slightly slower, so it doesn't have the sort of zip on it. Mohammed Abbas is absolutely perfect for that wicket as it was in this game. Someone like Vernon Philander, he would have been horrible on that pitch because he's very similar, where the seam is just wobbling down, one nips in, one nips away, and it's either hitting you on the shin or the top of the stumps, and it's absolutely horrible to face.
Do you keep Sam Curran instead of bringing back Jofra Archer then, Marcus?
I wouldn't change the bowling attack. I think that's the perfect bowling attack for that pitch, personally.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's interesting. And what those fellas do with the boys were saying is just every ball examines your technique, isn't it, Marcus? Every ball, your footwork's got to be perfect. Sometimes at 90 miles an hour, it's sort of like, oh, blimey, crikey, and it flashes off to the boundary, and you just sort of react to it.
Yeah.
It was lovely to see, and you're right. It was disappointing because that Pakistan bowling lineup, I reckon, could have caused England some troubles and that, and we were so frustrated not to see how it was all going to play out.
Inter Milan have beaten Shakhtar Donetsk 5-0 in the Europa League semi-final this evening. So the Europa League final will be Inter Milan against Sevilla. Romelu Lukaku got 2 of Inter Milan's goals.
He's scoring some goals, isn't he, over there?
He is, isn't he? Rugby Union Weekly here from 10 with Ugo Monye and Chris Ashton. And we are going to end Tuffers and Vaugham by talking about one of the game's modern greats who this weekend announced his international retirement.
India need 4. Koseka bowls, he smashed it high down the ground for 6. Into the seething crowd it goes to complete one of the great run chases in one-day international cricket, let alone a World Cup. And Dhoni, well, they're all running out, there are fireworks going off, his teammates have come rushing out and they're leaping all over him. What a way to finish it.
MS Dhoni scoring the winning runs in the 2011 World Cup final for India. On top of that, he captained India to the 2007 World T20 and the 2013 Champions Trophy. He is, Phil, a genuine great of the game.
Absolutely. Up there with the best of them, the Tendulkars and the Kohlis. I mean, he is an absolute legend in India, probably one of the coolest, calmest sort of cricketers I've seen, especially for being a wicketkeeper. They're usually a bit of a breed amongst their own, but I mean, he just oozed calm, probably one of the best white ball captains as well that I've seen, and just one of those box office cricketers. Loved to take it deep, didn't he? A great finisher. It was almost like he was just saying, I'm just going to take it deep so I can hit the last ball for 6, you know what I mean? But absolute box office cricketer, and done so much for Indian cricket.
He could time a run chase, couldn't he, Mark?
Cool.
Yeah, that was his skill, wasn't it? I think that's where he's really made his name, that along with his sort of captaincy. But, he always seemed to be going slower when most people would probably be a bit more frenetic in run chases, and would be thinking, right, you need to be getting a couple of boundaries here to get on top of this. But no, he just soak it up, run hard between the wickets, get himself into that position, and then seem to just build and explode, with this ferocity of shots, the big sixes and boundaries. Within 2 overs, he'd suddenly brought the game down to a run a ball, and it was like, well, this is easy now. I know what I'm doing. What are you lot on about? I've got it under control. But his calmness, I always admired his calmness. I thought it was exceptional. When he's captain,
isn't that calmness even more remarkable, that he's captaining from wicketkeeper, so he's not getting a break. All of that concentration whilst captaining the most cricket-mad country in the world, and the pressure that comes with that.
Yeah, for sure.
Of course, yeah. I think that's why we sit back and admire how calm he was. And you see little bits when you watch someone like Owen Morgan. You see little bits in Owen Morgan, don't you, where it's very calm, calculated, under pressure. It's like, yeah, no problem. I've got control of this. He just seemed to have, ooze his confidence in what he was trying to do. And it was, I think, for any professional sort of sitting back and understanding the pressures of the game, admiring that was pretty impressive.
Quick one, Tuffers.
And don't forget the helicopter shot. Never saw that beforehand.
Yeah.
Marcus, thanks for being with us. Thanks for giving us an insight into bulbs that I never knew we would ever get on Tuffers and Vaugham. So that's much appreciated. See you soon, Marcus. See you, Tuffers. Thank
Cheers,
you.
boys.
Missed any of Tuffers and Vaugham, we'll make it available as a podcast, and you can listen again via the BBC Sounds app. And that's exactly the same with the Monday Night Club earlier with Kieran Dyer, Dion Dublin and Charlie Adam.